Kiddush Hashem is serious. You know, for anyone that thought that Judaism was chicken soup and matzah balls, I mean, this stuff is for real. So let's begin the sugya. Amr Rab Yochanan Mishum Rab Shimon ben Yod Tzadok. Nimnu v'gomru baliyas peis nitze balud. Kol averis shebetorim omer l'adam avor val tehorig yavo val yehorig. Gunpoint, knife point, someone says, you do an avera or I kill you. Do the avera. Chutz mi avodos kachavim gili arayis u'shvichas damim. 3 averis that a person has to give his life for. Gemara takes a bit of a detour. It's a machlokas, Rabbi Shmuel and Reb Lezer, and the Gemara says we're going with Reb Lezer. How do I know that avodah zarah, you give your life before committing? You've got to give your life. You've got to love Hashem with your whole life, and certainly with your money. If there's someone whose life is more important to him than his money, what does this mean? Someone cares more about his money than his life. What it means is that the pain of living without money is something he could not endure. He'd rather not live than live as a pauper. So for such a person, you say, be ready to give up your money. Be ready to live as a pauper. Now, 1 second. Where did it say avodah zarah here? It says Rashi. V'aftas Hashem Elokecha, says Rashi, mashma shelo t'marenu be'avodas kachavim. V'aftas Hashem Elokecha is referring to not converting, not going over to some other form of worship, not replacing Hashem with an idol. Okay, that's avodah zarah. Arayis, so the Gemara brings the pasuk. The pasuk is equating arayis with ritzicha, with murder. Okay, and how about murder? Smar says, oh, that's a svara. That we know. Why is that? Who says your blood is redder than his? How do you kill to save your life? Who's to say your blood is redder than his? Okay, so it turns out that for any Aveira other than these 3, a person does not give his life. And the pasuk said why? The Gemara said why, and they brought the pasuk. V'chai b'hem v'lo sheyamus b'hem. Hashem says, I give you the mitzvahs, v'chai b'hem, live through them, and not die as a result of them. With 3 exceptions. The reasons for the exceptions, the pasuk, V'afta Hashem Elokecha, which means don't switch him for avodah zarah. Arayis, the pasuk compares to murder, and in murder there's a svara. In murder, what right do I have to save my life at the expense of someone else's? Who says I'm better than him? Then the Gemara goes and says, no, that's not the end of it. If the Malchus, if the government gives out a decree prohibiting fulfillment of a mitzvah, on the slightest thing, the slightest compromise in a mitzvah, the Gemara says even if Jews wear a certain shoelace, to go change that because of the authorities? No, you give your life for it. Then the Gemara adds, K'yaseh Rabban and Rabbi Yochanan afilu shelo b'shas gzeres malchus lo amru ela betzina, aber v'resi afilu mitzvah kala yihoreg val yavar. This is all betzina. Betzina means when there's no one looking. But farhesia in public, you can't do any avera. You have to give your life for it. And the Gemara brings the pasuk, v'nigdashti b'sov b'nei Yisrael. The pasuk, the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. Then the Gemara asks the kasha. Esther was married to Mordechai and allowed herself to be taken to Achashverosh. How is she allowed to do that? So the Gemara doesn't discuss the issue of arayas there. The Tosfos in several places deals with it. But the Gemara asks for Esther Parasiyahava. That was in public. So the Gemara has two terutzim. Either she did nothing, Esther Karka Olam Hoysa, she was passive, or the other answer, Hanos Atzmon Shani. When is it that we say that it's in public, that you have to give your life? That's when you are being challenged for idealistic reasons only, ideological reasons only, which means the person says, I want you to do an Aveira. Whereas the person says, do an Aveira because of for his own benefit. There, even if it's in public, you don't have to give your life for it. So to sum it all up, just read the beginning of the Rambam. It wasn't put on the sheets. But the Rambam, in Parakeh Yisod HaTorah, so the Rambam writes, Kol Beis Yisrael mitzuvim al Kiddush Hashem HaGadol Hazeh Shenema v'nigdashti b'sov b'nei Yisrael. Umuzharin Shelo L'chalo Shenem v'lo Sechalo Hashem Kodshi. The Rambam presents the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, the Aveira of Chil Hashem. And then he gives us all the halachas. Just a bit peculiar how he begins. He just told us there's a mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem and a prohibition of Chilul Hashem. Keitzad, says the Rambam. B'shosh yamod goy v'yenos es Yisrael lavar al echad mikol mitzvahs amuris b'Torah al yargenu o yargenu yavar v'lo yahorig. He begins, what is the first example of a fulfillment of the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem? Well, you should know. If a non-Jew tells him, do an Aveira. If not, I'll kill you, do the Aveira. And he brings the pasuk, Shneber mitzvah sheyasa adam v'chai b'hem, v'lo sheyamus b'hem. V'meis v'lo over hareze mischayev b'nafsho. This is the Rambam's shita. The Rambam holds that when you don't have to give your life, you're not supposed to give your life. We understand why the Rambam began with this halacha, because he wants to make the point that you don't give your life when you're not required to. Just the lashon is a bit puzzling. To begin by saying there's a mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, and then he gives us the example, well, when a guy tells him to do an Aveira, or else I'll kill you, do the Aveira. It's a funny fulfillment of V'nigdashti. Then he goes on, B'med dvarim amurim b'shar mitzvahs chutz me'avodah zarah gil arayos u'shvichas damim. Aval sholosh Aveiros elu im yomer lo avor alachas mem otara gehorig v'al yavor. Now, the halach is, these three Aveiros are Yehorig Val Yavar. So this is also something that we really have to stop and think about. Example. Why is it that if being given the choice of killing or being killed, you're supposed to choose being killed? Because you don't have the right to take the life of another person for the sake of saving yours? Because it says, who says your blood is redder? Is that Kiddush Hashem? The issue there is Kiddush Hashem. I'm sure there are plenty of non-believers. I'm sure there are plenty of people for reasons of, I guess you'd call it ethical reasons, humanistic reasons, would come to the same conclusion. Go even further. So we have a pasuk that equates the Avera of Arayas with murder. So the Torah is telling me that the Avera of Arayas, that immorality is tantamount to murder. So is the issue there Kiddush Hashem, or is the issue there the severity of the Avera? So I guess the most straightforward reading of the Gemara would have been that Kiddush Hashem was not introduced till we got to the point that the authorities outlawed doing mitzvahs. But when you're dealing with the basic halacha of giving your life rather than do these three averis, the way we understand it is that the Torah tells us these averis are so severe, you're better dead than committing them. That's not so much an issue of Kiddush Hashem. That's much more a statement of the severity of these three particular averis. But the Rambam includes that in Kiddush Hashem as well. All right, then the Rambam goes further. B'meh dvarim amurim bizman she'agoyim niskavein lahanos atzmo. Kagon, shanso livnos lo beiso b'shabbos, levash lo tavshilo, onas isha levola, kayotze bezeh, av niskavein laviro la mitzvahs bilvad. All the non-Jew wants to do is get you to do an avera. He likes the idea of a Jew breaking his own rules. So there it depends. If it's in private, it's all right. In public, not. And then at the end he says, where some king gets up and he wants to get the Jews to stop keeping mitzvahs, or even one mitzvah, the Rambam says, Yehorig v'al yavar. Okay, so we have three different parashiyos here. The big three, Avodah Zarah, Gila, Ransh, Shvichas Damin, the one has to give his life for, and the Rambam included that in this mitzvah. We have then the halacha of doing something in public, an avera in public, when the non-Jew is doing it just to prove the point that a Jew is doing averis. And the third one is at a time of gezeres, when the authorities outlaw doing mitzvahs. And you have to give your life for all of those. And one more thing, again, what's puzzling is the Rambam began by giving us the very first example of Kiddush Hashem. If it's not one of the big three, and it's in private, do the avera and don't get killed. And that's included under this mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. That's so funny. So I believe that in order to fully appreciate the entire sugya, it's important to move on to a related sugya. And that is the issue of how much of your money are you to give up for the sake of doing mitzvahs and not doing averis. So there's the sugya in Bava Kama. The Ran brings it. The Ran brings it in Sukkah. It's the Ran and Sukkah in your papers there. The sugya in Bava Kama, where that is discussing how much money to spend on an esrog. So the Gemara there begins and says, you've got to spend a third of your assets. So the Gemara says that couldn't be. So what if you've got 3 mitzvahs in a row? You've got to give up everything you have? So the Gemara says that couldn't be pshat. What we're talking about is, you have an esrog, there are different approaches in the Rishonim. It's a question of getting a nicer one, a bigger one perhaps. So there you've got to spend an extra third over the price of this, either this minimal esrog, or at least over the price of the one you had before. Different approaches there. But we're not referring to spending a third of your assets on a mitzvah. So the Ran points out, this would tell us that on any mitzvahs aseh, any positive commandment, there is no requirement to spend all your money for it. However, and he mentions the Ravid that says the same thing and says why? Because you don't make yourself poor, You don't become a burden on the community. He did not bring a source, but there is a source, and you have it there on the sheets too, the Gemara in Bav Metzia, the Gemara in Elam Metzias, the Mishnah that says, Aveidoso v'avedas oviv, Aveidoso kodemes, Aveidoso v'avedas rabo, Aveidoso kodemes. If it's a question of pursuing something you lost, or something belonging to your father that he lost, and you only have the option of getting one of them, your own comes first. That goes for your father, that goes for your Rebbe. Yours comes first. And the Gemara asks, where does that come from? What is the source to it? And the Gemara brings the pasuk of Efes kilo yiyevacha evyon, which literally, within the context, would sound like the Torah is promising us that there will never be poor people that there won't be poor people among the Jews. The problem is that the pasuk explicitly says quite the opposite. It says, Ki lo yechdal evyon mikerev ha'oretz. The Torah reassures the Jew who thinks that the day may come that there will be no one who is needy, and therefore we will not have an opportunity to help anybody. So the Torah comforts us and says, no, that's not the case. Ki lo yechdal evyon mikerev ha'oretz. There will never be a situation where people will not be in need. Don't worry about it. You'll always have something to do. There will always be a place for helping others. Torah has to reassure us. So how can the Torah say, Eves kiloi v'chal evyon, there will absolutely not be a poor man amongst you? So the Gemara understands that this is not a promise, but this is a commandment. The commandment is, don't make yourself poor. You do not have the right to make yourself needy. And this way you'll become a burden on everybody else, be it financially, and by the way, it's not limited to finances, emotionally as well. Familiar with social workers' burnout? People who help and help and help and help, and they become basket cases themselves. That's prohibited. This pasuk says you never overdo it. You have a responsibility to remain a happy, healthy, pleasant person of means. You're not allowed to do something that is going to turn you into someone in need, a nitzrach. So the reason why your own lost object comes first is because you don't make yourself poor. But then the Gemara goes on. And the Gemara tells us that if someone is a little bit too concerned about becoming needy, sofa bali dekach, he will end up being that way. And Rashi explains, a person that refuses to help anyone because he's always concerned with his financial security. I can't give anything. Who knows what I may need someday? Someone like that, the Torah guarantees him. He's going to end up becoming needy, the very thing he's afraid of. In other words, it's got to be done within reason. Make sure you don't overdo it. At the same time, come on. Don't be so ridiculously concerned with any possibility that can ever come up, and you'll be in need to the point that you're not going to be helping other people. This is very typical when it comes to Ben Adam Lachaver. The Torah leaves it up to our judgment to really be able to determine just how much to give and help. Don't underdo it, don't overdo it. Anyway, so what do we see from here? The Torah says that there's a prohibition when it comes to your means, your money. There's a prohibition of not making yourself needy. So from this, the Ravid and the Ran both got that when the Gemara says, if you get 3 mitzvahs, you're going to have to spend everything, and the Gemara rejects that, it's based on the pasuk of Efes kilo yiyevacha evyon. You're not to make yourself poor. You cannot make yourself needy. Okay, but then the Ran goes on. And the Ran says this is only with regard to spending money on a positive commandment. Whereas, if it's a matter of you're being threatened, you're told, if you do not commit this aveira, all of your money will be confiscated. In order to save yourself from an aveira, you're going to have to spend a lot of money. You'll be left penniless. When it comes to an aveira, you've got to give all your money. Give all of your money. The Ran does not cite a source. He does not cite a source. But he gives this as the halacha. There's a tshuva, the Mari Weil, you've got it here on the sheets, where he was asked, it seems that in many cities they had this character that was called the Poritz. Called the Poritz. This was this usually wealthy, powerful, influential person who was close to the authorities. And he lived his life the way he felt like. He wasn't especially observant. But everyone had to respect him or you were in trouble. And the shaila that was asked the Mari Weil is, why doesn't anyone speak up? There's a mitzvah d'oraisa of tochocha, to give rebuke. How can we tolerate this person who is totally unconcerned with what the Torah has to tell him when it involves things that are important to him, and everyone's just nice to him? What happened to our values? So he answers, I mean, you can lose your life. You can have your head chopped off. So he's asked then, what if you don't think there's a danger to life? Do you have to spend money on this mitzvah of tochacha? So listen to what the Mari Weil answers. One doesn't have to. And one of his proofs is Miditzrich krol lichtov b'chol mo'odecha shechayev adam limsor kol mamono b'shvil Kiddush Hashem. The pasuk says in the mitzvah of Ahavas b'chol mo'odecha, which is all of your means. The Gemara said it was all your money. That was only in the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. Remember, the same pasuk says b'chol nafshecha. The Gemara says that where is this b'chol nafshecha? Where does it apply? Where the person is trying to get you to be oved avodah zara. And the way Rashi explained it, the mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem Elokecha means don't exchange him for some idol. And there the pasuk says you have to give your life and you have to give all your money. From there, one can deduce that if we weren't dealing with the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, if it's not a matter of avodah zara, you don't have to give up all your money. Sounds logical. Whereas the Torah is equating giving up all your money with giving your life. So anywhere you don't have to give up your life, you don't have to give up all your money. Now, this is totally different than what the Ran said. According to the Mari Weil, then, if it's a question of breaking an Isser D'Oraisa, a Torah prohibition, or losing all your money, do the Avera. That's what he's saying. B'chol mo'odecha is limited to the Yisra Avodah Zarah. It's only with his Kiddush Hashem. Otherwise not. I mean, this sounds very rational. So the Machlokas, the Ran, and the Mari Weil. Do you give up all of your money for the sake of not breaking an Isser? For the sake of not being over some Isser? Prohibition. How do we paskin? What's the halach? So it's interesting. The Ran and Mari Weil are both brought down in two places in Shulchan Aruch. One actually in the same paragraph. In Hilchas Lulav, the actual case of the Gemara in Bava Kama is brought down of how much you've got to spend on getting a more beautiful esrig. And at the end of it over there, the Ramah brings down. This is only because it's a mitzvah saseh. If it were a question of breaking a prohibition, you've got to spend all your money, just like the Ran. A second time is in Yoredea Kuf Nun Zayin, which is the siman of Kiddush Hashem. And the Ramah brings the halacha that if it's a question of spending all of your money in order not to break a negative prohibition, the halacha is you are mechuyev to. And again, his source is the Ran. Right after that, in that same place, the Ramah goes on and he says, when it comes to the mitzvah of tochacha, you do not have to go and lose money over it. And that's why we do not stand up to this paritz. And he cites as his source the Marivail. Later, at the end of Yoredei, in Hilchas Cherem, the Ramah brings the same thing again. That no one says anything when this paritz carries on because of the Marivail. You are not required to lose all of your belongings over this, and who knows what's going to happen. The question is, how do they fit? So the answer is, as far as the halacha, there's no problem. The actual halacha, that you don't have to spend all of your money on the mitzvah of tochacha, the Ran would agree to also. It's a mitzvah saseh. The same way you don't have to spend all your money on an esrog, you don't have to spend all your money on tochacha. In other words, the halacha of the Ramah is fine. There's no contradiction. The problem is he cites as his source the Marivail. His source should not be the Marivail. His source should be that the Ran told us you don't have to spend all your money on a mitzvah. But he brings the Marivail. So the Gra points out that there is a contradiction here. That the Ramah really is holding like the Ran. He just brought the Marivail, not for the reasoning of the Marivail, but he was the one that brought the case. But the Marivail is really holding that you don't have to spend all your money in order not to break a mitzvah either. In order not to do an aver either. Okay, in other words, the Gra is telling us, and you've got to say this according to the Ran, the halacha is like the Ran, not like the Marivail. Fine, the halacha is like the Ran, not like the Marivail. You've got to give up all your money not to break an is. Marivail asked the great kasha. The pasuk says, "V'afta Hashem Elokecha b'chol levav v'chol nafshecha v'chol miyodecha." But from b'chol nafshecha, we learn that you have to give your life for avodah zarah only. That's how we're translating v'afta. And the pasuk goes on and says, "B'chol modecha," which that same Gemara said meant all your money. How could we then go and apply this to all the other mitzvahs? What does the Ran do with the Marivail's, his diuk, his kasha? How do you deal with this? I believe that we've got to take a whole new approach here, meaning that the Marivail and the Ran seem to be arguing over just how to learn up this Gemara. The pasuk says, what is the mitzvah of this pasuk? Tell me, what mitzvah do we learn from the pasuk of V'ahavta? What are the sheish? It's the mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem. And the pasuk says you've got to love Hashem more than your dear life, more than all your belongings. That's what the pasuk is referring to. The Marivail is understanding that this pasuk, based on this Gemara, is referring to the prohibition of avodah zarah. And only there do we say b'chol nafshecha v'chol miyadecha. The Marivail is the Kiddush. Well, the question is, what do we do with our Gemara? What do we do with our Gemara? If we are to say that the mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem means that your love for Hashem should be greater than your love for your own life and all of your money, so why don't you have to give your life and your money for any mitzvah? You should have to give it up for everything. Hashem comes first. So there's an answer to that. It says, V'chai b'hem. Hashem tells you, do these mitzvahs v'chai b'hem. Which means, every time you do a mitzvah, Really, the mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem says you have to be prepared to give your life up for every single mitzvah. My love for Hashem is more important than anything, including my own dear life. The Torah comes and says, V'chai b'hem. Hashem is telling you. Your Ahavas Hashem requires you to stop. To stop. And make sure you live. You were prepared to give your life for this mitzvah? Okay. But I'm telling you, you shouldn't do that. You're required to live. So it's a funny thing. My first step is every single mitzvah. I'm ready to give my life. But Hashem says, no, there's another kind of Mesiras Nefesh. Even though you got to be prepared to give your life for it, don't. Listen to me, don't. You got to live. That's all included in the mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem. You hear that? Why is it that if faced with the choice of doing an Aveira or dying, that the Jew does the Aveira? Good thing the Shulchan Aruch didn't tell me I got to give my life for this one. No, I'm prepared to die for it. Hashem comes first. I'm ready to give him everything. He doesn't let me. He tells me, stop, don't give your life for this. So my Ahavas Hashem now takes me a step further. I'm prepared to give my life, but I've got to stop because Hashem told me don't. That's in all the other mitzvahs. That's in all the other mitzvahs. What's with Avodah Zarah? We already used up this pasuk. If you look at the words of Rashi on that Gemara, it sounds like what we're dealing with, and I'm not even sure why I have to send you to Rashi. This Gemara is obviously not Pshuto Shel Mikra. It is not the Pashte Dikra. It's what we call a drosha. It's something that we're learning out of the pasuk. Mashma shelo tamirenu b'avodas kachavim. There's a mashmos. In other words, the pashta dikra, the simple meaning of this pasuk is love Hashem more than your life, your belongings, for everything. But there's a din of v'chai b'hem. Hashem says, don't give your life. You got to be prepared to, but don't do it. But the pasuk also says, "V'after Hashem Elokecha." Come on, you're going to call that loving Hashem more than your life if you're willing to bow down to a false god? The Gemara is making a limud. The Gemara is learning out that this pasuk is not only giving us the mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem, but it's also telling us that one particular aspect of it, which is that when you're dealing with Hashem Himself. B'chol nafshecha. Here there's no v'chai b'hem. Here the pasuk's literal, b'chol nafshecha. Not just be prepared to die. Die. There are two levels. The first thing is the mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem, which requires us to give up our lives for every single mitzvah. I'll even go further, even for a mitzvah saseh. Just what can you do? The pasuk says, Efes kiloi v'chai avyon. The pasuk says not only v'chai b'hem, but the pasuk says don't make yourself poor. That pasuk is referring to tzedakah, which is a kum v'asei. The pasuk is not saying efes klo v'chai avyon when it comes to something negative. Therefore, something passive. Therefore, the Ran takes it as a davar pashit for any aveira. If it's a question of the aveira or spending all of your money, we're left with b'chol mo'odecha. That means we have a basic machlokus, the Ran and the Marival here. The Ran understood that the pasuk v'chol levav v'chol nafshecha v'chol miyodecha is referring to every single mitzvah. Except that we had an added drosha that when it comes to Avodah Zarah, which is the antithesis of Ahavas Hashem, there couldn't be a v'chai bohem. But really every mitzvah has that. And it should have been for every mitzvah saseh as well. But it says, Eves kol v'chai evyon. That's only when it's a question of buying something for a mitzvah. A question of not doing an avera. Spend all of your money, b'chol modecha. That's the source to it. Now, the same may sound radical. There's a Chuvas Rivash. Now, the Rivash himself we're going to get back to because he has a shita that's very important in this sugya. The Rivash is of the opinion that the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, v'nigdashti, is only in public. Very much like the way I began by saying that Avodah Zarah Gil Araya Shvichas Damim, that's because of the Chomer HaAveira that you don't give that you give your life, and not because of Kiddush Hashem. That will be another sugya that Amir Hashem will be talking about. But you've got to read his words. His shaila was, you have to know the background. The halacha is that someone who is a Baal Aveira, someone who does Aveiras, he does one Aveira and hasn't done Shuvah. The halacha is he's pasul le'edus. His edus is disqualified. So he was asked the shaila. Somebody was faced with one of the Gimel Chamuris. He was told either you break Avodah Zarah Gil Arayis or Shvichas Damim, or I shoot. So what was he supposed to do? Allow himself to be shot. Instead, what did he do? He did the Aveira. Is he kosher le'edus or pasul le'edus? That was the shaila. So he answers, Da, shemi she'avra al kol mitzvahs HaTorah ba'onis, va'afilu over Avodah Zarah, shadinu yohareg val yavar, im over v'lo nerag lo nifsa le'edus, keven she'osa kein ba'onis. An Aveira that is done because you were forced to do it, that is not an Aveira that you get punished for having done. So much so that the person is not even nifsa le'edus. He did it out of fear of death. Bezdin does not punish if someone does an Aveira ba'onis. The onus rachman apatrim if lanar lo sasa dover. The pasuk says that if someone was onus, then they do not get punishment. The afal gav sheba'osin averis, that in those averis shedinon sheyohareg val yavar. He's talking about all the averis that the halach is yareg val yavar. Im avar v'lo nerag lo kiyem mitzvahs v'ahavtas Hashem alakecha b'chol levav v'chol nafshecha. He was mavatal the mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem. You hear this? He says this about all three chamuras. He says if somebody was over on arayis or shvichas damim because he was threatened, so he doesn't get punished for the ritzicha, he doesn't get punished for the arayis because that was bonus, but he was mavatal the mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem. Where does Ahavas Hashem get to arayis and ritzicha? The Gemara used v'afta Hashem alakecha only with regard to Avodah Zarah. Where did that come in? He understands that Ahavas Hashem means give your life for everything that the halach is you have to give your life for, which includes ritzicha and gil arayis. This is his shita, that if it was in public, then you weren't makayim Kiddush Hashem. Mikol makom, keven shelo chilol mitocha onis lo nifsa le'edus. Doesn't come puzzle edus. Mefurish in the Rivash. That the mitzvah of after Hashem Elokecha b'chol levav v'chol nafshecha v'chol yadecha applies to everything. It's just, and here we got to make the cheshbon again. It's just that Hashem says in all the other mitzvahs, v'chai b'hem, you got to be prepared to give your life, but don't do it. Don't do it. Avodah Zarah Gil Arayis Shvichas Damim, because of the severity of the Aveira, there's no v'chai b'hem. Memela, it's covered under the mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem. You no longer have an excuse. You got to give your life up. And when it comes to your money, where there's no v'chai b'hem, you got to give up all your money. And that applies to all the mitzvahs. A positive mitzvah that we have, the Efes Kiloi V'Chevion, that the Torah says in the Parsha of Tzedakah, which is a positive mitzvah. Now, that changes everything. So let me first begin with my first kasha on the words of the Rambam, that the Rambam begins by saying there's a mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, Ketzad. If someone tells you, do an Aveira, I'll kill you, do the Aveira. What kind of Kiddush Hashem is that? The Rambam understands that if a Jew, when being challenged, you got to do an Aveira. The Jew says to himself, no, I'm ready to give my life up. And then the Torah comes and says, V'chai b'hem, and he doesn't give his life up. Not because his life is too important to him, but because even though he was prepared to give his life, the Torah doesn't let him. That's a Kiddush Hashem. That's a kiyum of Kiddush Hashem. Means we begin, the given is, you love Hashem more than anything. Got to be ready to give your life up for everything. But Hashem doesn't let you in some cases. So that's all within the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. To go ahead and give your life up to Hashem, or be prepared to give your life up of Hashem. When you're living Ahavas Hashem, that's a Kiddush Shem Shamayim. The Ma'aseh of Rabbi Akiva. Ma'aseh of Rabbi Akiva. They're torturing him to death. The Gemara in Brachos. They're scraping his flesh off his bones with iron combs. And he's saying Shema Yisrael, and the Talmidim ask him, Ad Kedei Kach. Here you're also saying Shema, and he says, all my life, Kol Yomai Hayisi Mitztayer, all my life, I was waiting for this opportunity to give my life up to the Rabbeinu Shalom. Now that it's come to me, it's come to my hand, I'm not going to fulfill it. Now, understand, Rabbi Akiva wasn't given a choice. It's not like someone told Rabbi Akiva, if you convert out, then you're okay. They knew who Rabbi Akiva was, they knew what he stood for, and that's why they were killing him and torturing him to death. By him giving his life up to Rabbeinu Shalom willfully, with simcha, with ava. He was Mekayim Ahavas Hashem, and by the way, that's Kiddush Hashem. That's Kiddush Hashem. Which, by the way, there's a question. They tell the story of Elchanan Wasserman when he's taken out to be executed. So he was telling everyone. They say he was in the same monotone as always, cool, calm, collected, matter of fact. And he said, we're about to do a great mitzvah. And he said, we have to go make a bracha, and they made a bracha, two different texts of exactly what bracha. He said it was the bracha on Kiddush Hashem. There's a shorter text and a longer one. The question is which one he said. He made the bracha of Kiddush Hashem. What's the Kiddush Hashem? He wasn't given a choice. He was not given a choice. He's being executed. This is all the mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem. If a person is prepared to and gives his life up for Hashem with ava, with love, that's Kiddush Hashem. Can make a bracha on it. Can make a bracha on it. That's what Rabbi Akiva was doing. He was giving up his life willfully. He couldn't wait to give his life up to Hashem because Hashem wanted it. He was dying al Kiddush Hashem. Ad kan halacha. I can't help but share with you a sfas emes. Tradition has it that this was actually the very first The very first tish that the Sfas Emes held, he was young when he became the Rebbe. It was Parsha Shmini. And that's the Parsha in which the sons of Aaron, they bring an Eish Zara. They brought a Ketores that they were not commanded to, and they die. And it sounds like, these were adventurous kids that decided to do something they didn't have to, and they were killed for it. And obviously that's not who they were. And the Sfas Emes said there, every time you do a mitzvah, you got to do it with b'chol levavcha, v'chol nafshecha, v'chol miyodecha. When you do a mitzvah, you put your whole self into it till your neshama is ready to fly back up there. You give your life up for every mitzvah. However, it says v'chai bahem. V'chai bahem is for all of the mitzvahs that we were commanded. This was an eisha shelo tzuva. This was something they weren't commanded to do. So there's no v'chai bahem. So they just gave their whole selves up to the Rebbeinu Shalom the way you're supposed to when you do a mitzvah. There's no v'chai bahem. And that's why they died. The story goes that when he became the Ger Rebbe, so he was a young man, Reb Chaim Ozer, who was the head of the world of the yeshivas, sent 2 Talmidim from the Mir to go listen to him and try to get a feel for whether or not he was really a big person. So they came back and they told us to Reb Chaim Ozer, and Reb Chaim Ozer said, listen, I never suspected that he's a liar. If he's capable of saying something like that, he must be holding there. This is an Adam Gadol. The Sfas Emes doesn't end there. There's another Sfas Emes in Achrei Mos. The pasuk begins at the beginning of Achrei Mos. Hashem said to Moshe, Achrei Moshe b'nei Aaron, Daber el Aaron achicha, va'al yavo b'chol eis el hakodesh v'lo yamus. He should not walk into the Kodesh Kedoshim whenever he feels like it, and he should not die. So, Pashit Pshat, we all understand, he shouldn't go in there because he'll die. The Sfas Emes learns otherwise. V'lo yamus is part of the commandment. What Aaron was being told was true. If you'd walk into the Kodesh Kedoshim to come closer to Hashem at a time that you're not commanded to, you're going to be giving up your life. That's a very high madrega. That is the greatest thing ever. You may be tempted to give it a try. Comes Hashem and says, all right, I'm giving you a v'chai b'hem for this one too. Al yava b'chol eisel hakodesh v'lo yamus. Don't try this. Don't go give up your life for it. Don't go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim when there's no mitzvah, so there's no v'chai b'hem. Don't do that. Didn't come here to preach Chassidus. But I think this is la halacha. The mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem requires us to be prepared to give our lives and everything we own for every mitzvah, and rather than do any aveira. We've got to be prepared for that. When you do a mitzvah, it's got to be with such love for Hashem that you're ready to give your life up. But then the Torah says, v'chai b'hem. Other than the 3 that are severe, v'chai b'hem. Control yourself. With mesiras nefesh, don't die. And if you feel that way, that's a fulfillment of Kiddush Hashem. Your money, give it up. A positive mitzvah, don't make yourself poor. But you got to be ready for it. You got to be ready for it. I think the yesod of Kiddush Hashem is Ahavas Hashem. And that's why the Rambam also includes Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayos, and Shvichas Domim in private as part of a fulfillment of Kiddush Hashem. Where we ask, the pashtus of the Gemara is that the reason why these 3 averis you would give your life for is because of their severity. better dead than transgress these three. No, that's not enough. Because they're so severe, there's no v'chai by him. And once there's no v'chai by him, what requires you to give your life? B'chol nafshecha. B'chol nafshecha. And when you do that, you're Mekadesh Shem Shamayim. When a Jew chooses serving Hashem, accepting Hashem's judgment, when he chooses that over his life, over his belongings, over his wealth, he's Mekadesh Shem Shamayim. I believe this is an appropriate introduction to the sugya. I don't want you all sitting here going through the sugya and feeling like, oh no, there are times that we're required to give up our lives. Oy vey. I guess you surrender and you give in. That's not Kiddush Hashem. That's not Kiddush Hashem. V'afta Hashem Elokecha. The Jew recognizes there's nothing worth living for that comes close than the love that comes close to the love of Hashem. Feeling close to Hashem. It's worth giving up everything you've got, including your life on this planet. All your potential, everything you could have done here. It's worth giving all of that up just to be close to Hashem. There are times he doesn't let you. But when he does, it's filled with love, not surrender. Not surrender. The kiyum of Kiddush Hashem is willfully making sacrifices because they're not sacrifices. Because your Ahavas Hashem is so much more powerful. We should all live long, happy lives, but live with Ahavas Hashem and a sense of Kiddush Hashem all the time. You can do this every time you fulfill a mitzvah. And every time you're tested and tempted, and you restrain yourself out of love for Hashem, you're Makayim Kiddush Hashem, which is another aspect of the sugya that I'm sure you're going to be learning.